Hi, and welcome to this third and final episode in this little mini-series about unpacking in Python. Today we will look at a little bit more advanced technique using unpacking. But before we dive into that, I want to show you something else, and maybe you're already aware about this. But we will take a look at the zip function and see what it does. And then we will see how we can use the zip function together with unpacking to perform some really nice tricks. So let's create two lists here. So we call it list 1 equals 1, 2, and 3. And then we have list 2 that will have 4, 5, and 6. And then we will create something that I call combined, and I will use the zip function and pass in list 1 and list 2 to it. So what this will do is it will combine these two lists. It will not concatenate them together, it will combine them, it will zip them together. So we cannot just print the combined to see the values, because if we do that, as you can see here, we just see that it is a zip object. But what we can do is that we can iterate over combined. So let's create a for loop, and we say for item in combined, and then we print item. So let's see now what this combined actually contains. It contains three things, and as you can see, it combined the first values from the two lists together into a tuple, and then the second two values into one tuple, and the last two values into a tuple. So it kind of zipped them together, matching one by one. Now zip will ignore any values that are not matched. So in this case, this 4 here at the end will not be a part here, because we don't have anything in the first one to match it with, so it just ignores it. But if we add something to the first one, then we see it takes these two values and zip them together as well. So it will only take as many values as the shorter one has. So this is nice. But what I will do now is I will use the unpack operator, this little asterisk that we've seen in the previous two videos. I will use it in combination here. So let's say I have A and B, and then I use zip, but I use this star operator here on combined, and then I print A, and then I print B. So let's see what we get if we do this. And as you can see now, it has unzipped these values. So in combined here, we had these zipped values 1, 4, 2, 5, 3, 6. But using this unpacking operator here together with zip, then it will take it back to the original. But need to notice that zip will return tuples even though the originals were lists. So the what we get back here is tuples, as you can see, because they're surrounded with normal parentheses. So this is a nice feature, but we can take this even a step further. So let me show you something else, and this is a really advanced technique, and I will try to explain what it does, and I will show you a website where we can actually visualize what is happening here, so hopefully you will understand what is going on here. But first, so let's create a list. I call it initial list, and it will contain 9 values. Like this. And what I want to do now is I want to split these into sublists in the main list. So I will write a comment here showing you what I'm after. What I want is a list of lists. So in the first list here, I want 1, 2, and 3 as a sublist. And then I want a list with 4, 5, and 6. And then I want a sublist here with 7, 8, and 9. And this was actually a problem I had not too long ago. I wanted to do this because I had a course, Python course, where I was gonna work with multi-threading, and what I wanted to do was that I had a long list like this, huge list actually, and I wanted to split it up into sublists like this, and then I wanted to get a thread to take one of these lists and go through it to find any prime numbers in this. And another thread will pick up another sublist and start to look for prime numbers in that one. And a third thread will take another list and so on. So I wanted a way to have a list of values and create a list of sublists like that. And what I came up with was a way of using the zip and the unpacking technique that we just saw to accomplish this. So I will show you what you can do. So for example, if I'm creating something like, we can experiment with this a little bit, but let's have an X here. And then I say zip and the unpacking, and then here I will have an iterator with the initial list like that, and then after here I will multiply this by 3. So let's see what this does. If I print X, you will see that I just get this zip object as we had before. So let's iterate over X. For V, for value in X, and then we print V. Now let's see what we get here now. And as you can see, what this gives us is tuples. It's like this is a tuple, these values tuple, and these values a tuple. So it does this halfway. It is not surrounding it with the list, and they are tuples, not lists. So the next step here would be to create lists instead of tuples and surround the whole thing with a list. And I can accomplish this with a list comprehension. So let's say I have here list V for value again, and for V in this. So what this will do now is it will create one of these tuples and return it back here as V, and it will be created as a list, converted into a list, and then it will go and take the next tuple values and create a list out of it, and so on. And as this is a list comprehension, we need to end this with a square bracket. Now X will be a list of lists. So let's print X, and you will see. Now I have exactly what I wanted. So this was the way I solved this problem. This 3 here is how many values I want in the sublist. So let's say I have 2 here. You can see that now I only have 2 values in each sublist, and as we're working with zip, it will ignore anything it cannot match. So we lose the 9 here now. So what I would need to do here is I need a way of handling this. I could, for example, pad the initial list. If it's not a multiple of this value, I can pad it with a value or whatever I want to do. But I can use this technique to split a list into a list of sublists. So what we will do here, we will use this website called pythontutor.com, and it has a really nice feature because it can visualize the code so we can see what is happening here. And I prepared some code and we have it here, and it's actually more or less the same that we had in the editor before. So if we look at this, we have a list with 9 numbers just as previously, but I took this apart a little bit. So this zip part that I had here, I have it in a single line, and then I have the list comprehension on a single line. So let's look at this and try to understand what is happening here. So now it will visualize this, and as you can see right now it's pointing at the first line up here. So when I'm pressing forward, it will execute this. So what this does is actually just creating my list with the 9 values. So now it will execute the zip function called here, and as you can see, we can't really see what is happening inside here, but it gave us this zip instance, this zip object. But the interesting part comes now when we look at the list comprehension here. So it will perform this list comprehension on the zip instance, and as you can see now, it took out a sublist. You can see it's a tuple. So it took out the sublist, and it will be the 3 first values here. So it extracted that from this zipped object. And it will pause it over here and create a list out of this. It's a tuple now, so it will create a list out of that. And then it takes out the next 3 numbers, 4, 5, and 6, and then 7, 8, and 9. And finally, as you can see now, we have these 3 separate lists. And if we do the final step here, we can actually see that we now have list of lists. That is a list. And the first sublist here in the list of lists points out this 1, 2, 3 list. The second item in the list of lists point out the 4, 5, 6 list, and the third item in the list of lists will point out the 7 and 8 and 9 sublist. So this is what happens here, and that is how we can split up a list of lists into, one single list into a list of lists using unpacking together with the zip function or the inverse zip function. So that was the final episode of Unpacking, and I hope you learned a lot and that you saw that unpacking can be very useful in a number of ways. And we only just touched up on this topic. There are so many things we can do with unpacking. We have this way of passing in any number of arguments to a function. We haven't looked at keyword arguments and how we can pass that, but maybe we'll cover that in another video in the Python bits here. So take care, and I see you next time. Bye.